Hello, everyone. Good evening. Uh, Thank you for joining this event. I would like to welcome Assistant Secretary of the Bureau of Democracy and Human Rights in Labor and U.S. Special Coordinator for Tibetan issue, Mr. Robert Destro, and his colleagues for today's event.
Without taking much time, I would like to start a brief introduction to CTA Women's Empowerment Desk. My name is Srinki and currently I'm working as a project officer in Women's Empowerment Desk. In year 2008, the Central Tibetan Administration adopted the first ever Tibetan Women Empowerment Policy with an objective to enable Tibetan women and girls to participate as equal partners in all socio-economic and political activities. In 2017, the policy was revised and enhanced to enable Tibetan women to fully participate and contribute to Tibetan society and the world. The Women Empowerment Desk of CTA was established to implement this policy and to achieve this goal. The main objective of Women's Empowerment Desk is to build a gender-just and inclusive Tibetan community. We work to ensure that all the CTA programs are gender inclusive, where men, women, and others participate and benefit equally. Tibetan women have contributed significantly in social and political development and safeguarding our unique and rich culture. They continue to work to restore and build the community. Today, the number and percentage of women's participation in different aspects of exiled Tibetan society is improving at greater standard. Women now make up to half of the overall workforce of CTA staff. Women representations in the Tibetan Parliament stands at 25%. The percentage of women staff in education and health department stands at 48 and 60% respectively. Women make up to 40% economic activities in the community. CTA rules and regulations and charter provides for equal opportunity for Tibetan women, and there is no gender pay gap as such. Women Empowerment Desk has been associated with organizing different programs and projects over the years. Some of the key initiatives includes: first, training and workshop on gender sensitivity, women's empowerment, women's leadership, sexual and reproductive health, legal empowerment and economic empowerment. Second, research and development studies on status of Tibetan women and girls and gender equity. And last, strengthening CTA capacity to address key issues facing Tibetan women and girls. So far, more than 700 men and women have participated in our gender workshop. Around 300 women have received women leadership development training. Our menstrual health and hygiene management program has reached over 1,000 women and girls from across India and Nepal. Women Empowerment Desk has developed a guidelines on prevention, prohibition and redressal of sexual and gender-based violence for Tibetans in exile. This includes creating awareness to address gender-based violence, building dedicated gender-based violence services, and mechanisms such as hotlines and committee for redressal. Around 1,000 students have received training on prevention of sexual exploitation and abuse. Most of this program on sexual and gender-based violence prevention and response are supported by the US government. The coronavirus pandemic has gravely affected the world in an unprecedented way. The impacts of this pandemic has been felt at a greater effect on the vulnerable and the marginalized group. The economic impact has threatened the women's livelihood in the long term. With the lockdown, women have been burdened with unpaid labor. They are faced with the higher risk of gender-based violence. There are reports of an increase in the number of intimate partner violence, domestic violence across the globe. The recovery from this pandemic will definitely be long, but what is essential is to put women and girls in focus in our response and in recovery efforts. Our community is no different and has been affected by this pandemic. Our desk has launched the Women Helpline to provide emergency support and referral services for women in distress and in abusive situations. Women's Sustenance Fund and Safe Space has been established. We have initiated psychosocial counseling services in the community to assist and provide guidance for people to get through this crisis. There is still a long way to go. We are committed and will continue to work towards closing gender gaps and discrimination and violence against women and children and in creating a gender-just society.
So therefore, for today's virtual meeting with the Special Coordinator for Tibetan Issue, Assistant Secretary Robert Destro, we are proud to have 5 women journalists from different media houses. In Dharamsala alone, there are around 9 independent Tibetan media and 15 women work as journalists, editors, reporters in these media houses. We are joined here by Chugilamo from Payul, Tenzi Sangbo from Voice of America, Tashilhamo and Tenzi Petin from Voice of Tibet, and an independent reporter, Tenzi Sangmula. Thank you. Now, I would like to request Mr. Destro to kindly address the gathering. Thank you.
Shrinkila, you forgot to mention Pakdunla, editor of RFA.
From RFA.
Tenzi Pakti from RFA. I'm extremely sorry. Tenzi Pakti as well is joined here from Radio Free Asia. I must have missed it. So sorry. I would like to request Mr. Destro to kindly address the gathering.
Well, very good. Thank you. Good morning to all of you, and good evening here in Washington to my colleagues from the State Department. We have my colleague, Deputy Assistant Secretary Kara McDonald. Kara, you want to say hi to everybody?
Hello, I just turned my video off to try to help with the bandwidth. So that's why I'll be on off screen, but it is a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time this morning to meet with us and to share with us your impressions and the challenges and successes you face at work. Thank you.
Anta, do you want to say good morning to everybody?
Yeah, good morning. Good evening over here. I'm very excited to hear everyone's stories and very honored to meet with all of you today.
And I'm sure all of you know Stephanie Sandberg, but I'm going to allow her to say hello as well.
Hi, I don't think I've met some of you, but I really appreciate the work you do, and I'm glad that you're here to share your stories with us. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a real honor to be here with you. And what I'd like to do is just say a few words, not very many, because I want to hear from you. I mean, this is really more about you. It's more about the work you do, about the value of that work to the community. And so I'm going to be in good, I suppose, consumer mode, you know, because you all are the producers of the stories, and I'm not going to stand in your way of telling them by any stretch of the imagination. But you know, you really play an important role in the community, and what I'd like to do this morning with you is to understand your perspective on the unique role that you think you play in the Tibetan community, both in Dharamsala and then or in the larger Tibetan community around the world, and how, you know, that role how we in the United States government and we who are committed to the preservation of the Tibetan people, their language, their culture, their faith, how we can be of greater assistance in that project. Now, the other night, I had the honor of a lifetime when I was able to meet with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and one of the points that he made, and I think is one that is well taken, is our primary purpose in life is in helping others. He also talked about the unique role that the Tibetan Buddhism gives to thinking through and to trying to get a sense of what the truth is, and looking deeply into the world around you. Well, that is precisely what you as journalists do every single day. And you basically are the conduits of the Tibetan story to the rest of the world. If you don't tell the story, uh, and if you don't tell is what's happening to the Tibetan community, none of us are going to be able to hear that story. And your perspectives as women who are and continue to be the backbone of most communities around the world. I mean, and the and the backbone, as you quite rightly pointed out, is key about what an important role you play in the CTA and in other aspects of the community. So what I'd like to do is sit and listen to your stories a bit, and then, but in particular, to learn a little bit more about what you think we could be doing, whether it's organizing virtual meetings like this, introducing you to other people. You tell us, and we'll sit and listen. So thank you so much for taking the time this morning. I am now going into consumer of news mode. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Destro, for the for your remarks. Now I would like to request all the female journalists here, and first I would like to request Tenzin Sangmo from Voice of America to kindly introduce yourself and ask the question to Mr. Destro. Thank you.
Hello. Can you hear me? Okay. Tashiderek, Honorable Robert Destro, La, and your team, and my colleagues here. Thank you for inviting the Tibetan woman journalists to interact with you today, and I'm very honored to take part in this. I'm Tenzin Sangmo. I have been a reporter reporting from Dharamsala for more than 15 years now. And I started my career with Voice of Tibet and later moved to Voice of America Tibetan Service. Before I proceed further, I would like to let everyone know that the views I share here will be of my own. So in my 15 years of reporting career, I have covered various issues ranging from politics, financial, social, arts, and at times sports too. So I have grown with these experiences. And as you have mentioned, I think I have been able to be a messenger to my audience. Since His Holiness the Dalai Lama has devolved his political power in 2011, as a reporter, I have covered Tibetan elections during 2011, 2016, and 2021. And during these years, I have witnessed increase in people's participation in the democratic process. Like all democratic systems everywhere, our democracy is also faced with challenges and drawbacks. But I hope we all get to grow wiser and more competent with time. In order to sustain the Tibetan freedom movement, a healthy democratic society is essential, and in these developments, I feel support from US government and people played a vital role, and I hope you will continue to do so. Our democratic system is what makes us different from the Chinese communist system. I have also widely reported on the oppression and human rights abuses in Tibet, particularly around 2008, during which the chain of the latest uprising started. The situation continues to remain grave, with arrests and crackdown on every dissident voice. But we don't have clear information and access to the ground reality, despite the fact that China has already advanced into 5G internet services. As a Tibetan born in Tibet and grew up in India as a refugee, I personally feel that US government will strongly implement the Reciprocal Act and Tibet Support and Policy Act passed recently, so that these will help resolve the issue of Tibet sooner. And I hope we can all go back to Lhasa, the capital of Tibet, where I was born. Mr. Destro, I got to read about the virtual audience you had with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and also I've seen your interaction with the CTA leadership online. I do agree with you that we have a lot to do, and these are all hard works. This is all I want to share with you, and I would like to conclude with a question to you. You have already mentioned in the interaction with the CTA leadership that you will be in the government till next week, but you will continue to support the Tibet issue even from outside. So my question is, what would you recommend as the first priority on Tibet to the person who will succeed you as the special coordinator for Tibet? Thank you.
Well, I think the short answer is I would have him or her call you. What we need is, I think you put it very well when you said about the difficulties of getting to ground truth in Tibet and in the diaspora community around the world. The Tibetan language, culture, faith live in the community, and unless the person who succeeds me in this role is willing to sit and listen, then they're not going to be doing much good. So, like I said, I would have them call all of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Samula and Mr. Destro. Now I would request Chuki Lamo from Payu to introduce yourself and your question. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for giving me this opportunity today to the WET team and Mr. Robert Destro and the US Department team with us here today. I didn't exactly prepare an introduction. I thought it would be more from us to Mr. Destro. But since I would echo the same question, same line, I'm sorry about the dogs barking. Yeah, I would echo the same lines as to what Samula said. I'm also working. I've been working with Payul for more than a year now. And in my experience, I think the Central Tibetan Administration is a very important way to. It needs to be legitimate in order for the world to recognize us. And as a media person, I think we fill the gap between the Tibetan community and the world. However, what we see is we are more catered towards the administrative and bureaucratic world, but not more. We're not also very catered towards, very geared towards the Tibetans inside Tibet, which is lacking for us for obvious reasons. We do not have the resources. We do not have reliable sources that we can quote in our reports. So that's a big problem. Given that we have a U.S. Special Coordinator Robert Destro with us today, I would like to say that the U.S. needs, given that my question was about the elections that we are also going through, Tibetans are also going through our own round of elections. We just got done with the preliminary round. The next administration running the CTA will be taking office in May. And as we all know, US is also currently going through a transition in governance. So my question to you, Mr. Robert, how can we best navigate through these transitions and build upon the relationship between the US and Tibetan government in exile, given your recent meeting with the Tibetan leadership? Thank you.
Well, that's a very, very good question, and you know, I think certainly in my experience, the it's the relationships we build that get us through transitions, and so as I said to Ms. Singmo, that that the more we talk with one another through transitions, the better off everybody's going to be. I mean, I have some good friends who will be coming into the Biden administration. I'm talking to them, and you will have good friends who are coming into the next CTA administration. And as long as we keep the conversation going, I mean, that is the value of freedom of speech. It's the value, it's the freedom that you have as reporters. It's the unique perspective you have as Tibetan women reporters. You know, we have to hear those voices. We have to hear your voices. And that's how we get through transitions. You know, nobody thinks for a minute the transitions are easy. You know, it's not even, you know, it's not easy for me to it's not even easy for me to transition between asleep and awake. You know, so it's you know, transitions are hard, but you know, but if the relationships are good, so will be the transition.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Chukilamo and Mr. Destro. Now I would like Tenzin Sangmo to ask question to Mr. Destro.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Destro, for taking out time. And it is a pleasant surprise to hear that there's going to be a session just with a Tibetan women journalist. So I'm really happy to be attending this. As for, you know, you wanting to hear about our stories as a, you know, as you can see, we are a very small group here, you know, just a few. And among us, I'm relatively new here. So, you know, when Sangmola was talking about her experience of working for over 15 years, it reminded me of all the others who have set the path, you know, for us to, for the Tibetan community to have, you know, a media fraternity of a sort. So in that, I'm reminded of, you know, pioneers of Tibetan Review and many other outlets that, you know, and the likes of Jamang Norbu, Lodo Gary, a lot of others who came up with, you know, publications, wrote a lot of articles and sparked discussions in many, many decades, in the last 5 or 6 decades. So we're now just taking over, I feel. Yeah, so I want to give them all a credit for doing that, setting the path. And as for my own experience, we do face certain set of challenges, one of which, a major one, is being able to verify our reports, especially those coming from Tibet. In the last World Press Freedom Day that we celebrated here in Dharamshala, this discussion came up. So that is a really, you know, big challenges right now faced by independent media, someone like me, or someone working at Voice of America or Radio Free Asia. So in that, what we may be able to help each other is with CTA, or you know, the lawmakers in US give us access, as in, you know, with information, so we can call them directly. That would help a lot, since you were asking what we, you know, what we can do instead of having to go through channels. And for that matter, even with the CTA, I would really appreciate if you're just able to get in and ask a question directly to our Sikyo or our, you know, cabinet ministers, and you know, likewise in the US, as far as possible. That is my suggestion. And as for the independent Tibetan media that we have, I do feel that it needs a lot of assistance right now, because the US do commend His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the Tibetan exile for, working on our democracy here. And a major part of that, a big role should be played by media, independent media. So in that, we feel like I do feel a little left out, and I feel that sentiment is, echoed by others like me. So we may, want to feel more included. And so I do see that some of the upcoming leaders, as you know, we recently, completed the first round of the 2-round Sikyong election. And in that, we have a very capable, strong, the sole woman contender in Kasur Garidoma, the former Home Minister. And in her manifesto, she has listed supporting independent media and upcoming journalists as one of her 8 imperatives, must-dos, that she is willing to do, and anyone else, taking the office tomorrow, taking over the office, should do, which is support independent media. And she cited the example of how with India, in their freedom struggle, in their days, they worked together with independent media and the journalists and the reporters to pull together our resources, in telling of a story of what is happening to Tibet and to the Tibetans. So in that, we feel that it is important that we control our narrative, and we, are able, since our brethren in Tibet are not able to, that we are at least able to tell what is going on, instead of having our stories being told by others. So a little bit of controlling of narrative there. So in that, we can use a little bit of a support from all sectors, I feel. Yeah, and a question that I have is to do with TPSA, Tibetan Policy, Tibetan Support and Policy Act of 2019-2020. In that, there is a phrase that says that the humanitarian assistance will be regulated up until at least 2025. And the funding from the US has been a major point of discussion in elections, at least in the minds of the electorate, the voters. So if that is taken care of, if the voters are informed of that, I think we can then focus to other urgent matter in our hands. So could you please elaborate a little bit on that, and generally on the history of the humanitarian assistance rendered to the Tibetan exile community, and if Tibetans should be too worried about that in the coming years, because a large, part of our community, yes, are worried about the, erratic nature of how guaranteed is it that we will receive similar support in the future?
Well, thanks for those comments and the questions. One of the things that, as you were talking, I was thinking about how many programs we often have, certainly in democracy, human rights, and labor. We have a lot of training programs for journalists. And as I was listening to you, I was thinking, well, shoot, we don't need to train the journalists. You know exactly what you're doing. What we need to do is train the politicians so that they will talk to journalists instead. And this is really the. I come back to this question of you were talking about having us help you get closer access to the ministers and to politicians here. Now that's not an easy, I shouldn't say that's not really a hard thing to do. It's especially when you have an independent journalist, but I do think sometimes, because I'm blessed in one way that my younger sister is a journalist. And so I have been trained by a woman journalist on how to deal with journalists. And the answer is you have coffee with them and you do all the kinds of social things. And then when it's time, you put things on the record, but the first thing you need to do is get to know one another as human beings and understand what it is the person's interested in. Now, my own view is I always return journalist calls. Why? Because, I took the job. It's my obligation to keep people informed. Now, I wouldn't be accurate with you if I said I could actually talk knowingly right now about the money, because I can't. I mean, I don't want to give you misinformation, but that information about the kind of funding that's available from the State Department, from USAID, to the Tibetan community is all public record. And so, learning how to navigate that whole process is one of the things I think is not a bad idea in terms of the training programs for journalists. But getting people like me, my successor, and people like me to interact with the representatives of the CTA is not a bad project to work on, kind of increasing the penetration of journalists into the life, to the operations of the CTA is a great idea. I'd be curious to ask you about how much are you reporting on the life of the Tibetan community in other parts of the world. I mean, I'm very, very interested in learning more about the dynamism of the community, and of course, independent journalists are going to be the people who talk to us about that.
Thank you. I have been reporting in my not very long career, mostly on the CTA, where our Tibetan issue is going, mostly following that, and also a bit of local reporting focused on settlements, which I feel is very important, that we must tell our stories of people who were born when the settlements were founded and then passed in the settlement. So it's a life right there, even though we do not have good access. And as much as we would like to report on the atrocities faced by Tibetans inside Tibet, we just, right now, I, for one, do not have enough information to do that, confidently. And I believe that I also have my share of things to do to get there. But what I can do is do a lot of local reporting. As important as the larger issue of Tibet is, I think we cannot do away with local reporting on our stories as individuals, as groups. And for that, we have a very dynamic beat when you pick a settlement reporting, because in India we have 39, so across India, and India, as because of its diversity, people say that each state of India could be a country of its own, with its own language, culture, way of life. So settlements, because they are in different states, their situations, are very, very different. And as much as CTA tries to adjust, but we mostly have uniform, programs, and all of which are not equally effective all the time. So I think there are nuances to be explored, especially for reporters like me. So I have always tried to report on settlements, especially far-flung ones, the nomads, the ponymen of Ladakh, who accompany trackers, and those who work as labor in the Indian camps to support their children, education fees, and those who are still holding on to the art of making Tibetan carpet the old way, and which doesn't sell anymore because they don't know what is being sold and is in the market, and do not have the wherewithal to get there, but are still holding on to doing that. So these are all human interest stories that I personally feel very connected to, and as much as reporting on larger Tibetan issue where it is going and trying to control the narrative is important, I do feel that we do need to report on locally settlements. All of us, there are much to be told, and there are a lot already told by non-Tibetans, but I do feel that every time we tell a story, it does come out a little different. So yeah, I do a lot of that. Sorry, I'm taking a lot of time.
Thank you, Samo and Mr. Destro. And I know this discussion will go on. But next, I would like to request Mr. Shlamo and Belden from Voice of Tibet for their question.
Hello, Tashidele, Mr. Robert Destro, and everyone else. It's really a privilege to meet you today. And, I didn't have much time to prepare for this, and I did have one or two questions, but it seems like my colleagues already asked those. So I'm just going to introduce myself, this thing. My name is Tashi Lamo. I have worked in Voice of Tibet for the past 9 years. And before that, I've worked in CTA as a webmaster and a database developer. The experience I got in working in CTA has been very beneficial for me in working as a journalist in Voice of Tibet. And since Mr. Destro asked about how we cover the Tibetans outside of India and everything, like Voice of Tibet, we don't have many journalists in like all the places, but we do have many programs like Women of Tibet, Diaspora Feature, and other things. And also, this being the time of social media, and this thing, connectivity and everything is much better than before. So we do try to cover, everything that happens in diaspora and overseas, like all the diaspora communities. But one of our main focus in, of our work is to, know what is happening inside Tibet. And that has been one of the major challenges in my line of work, because information, as everyone knows, due to the severe repression of China, information is very hard to come out of Tibet. So this is our main, area of challenge. And, I don't have maybe Mr. Robert Destro can tell us like how U.S. Support can help us in in this area. This thing. That's all. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you. I mean, that's a the way the Chinese are making it difficult, if not impossible, to get information out of Tibet is the way in which they control the narrative. And Ms. Sangmo's point about the need for Tibetan journalists to create and sustain their own narrative, runs headlong into the repression, and of the government and of all the Chinese entities that try and make it difficult to tell the story, to get the facts out. And I think we're seeing in many places attempts by authoritarians to control narratives. And this is why, at least from my perspective, the role of the independent journalists is so important. We've seen in many places the collapse of independent newspapers. They have become dependent on their subscribers, and many times subscribers don't want to hear bad news. And so the role of the independent journalists like yourself is, it actually goes up exponentially pretty much every day. And so, so my question back to you is, what besides, I mean, it's always easy to say, well, if we only had more money, we'd be able to do more. And, but if we were talking about ways in which we could be useful that don't involve money, what would some of those be?
Hello, I'm sorry about that. I keep forgetting that I've been muted. So, the sharing of information, apart from monetary aid and everything, I think what we need more than money is information. And in that regard, if there could be like, I don't know, some means to share more information, like USA has a far more advanced information technology, and they have many more means than us to get information from Tibet. And I mean, like the reports that the State Department produces each year about the situation inside Tibet has been very helpful for us. And things like that, sharing of information as much as we can, and like those kind of things would be very helpful to us, I think.
Well, that's something that I think you should be working on. I actually just sent an email tonight before I left to come home to some colleagues at USAID and colleagues within the State Department, pleading with them that it's necessary to share information about what's going on. Now, I'm talking about a completely different country than Tibet, but the if you were to look at a map of the programs that both the State Department and USAID run, there's a reporting network all by itself. All you need to do is get a hold of the people who run those programs and start talking to them. But what I'm amazed at is that they don't talk to each other. So one of the big problems we have within state itself, getting people to talk to one another across bureaus and divisions, but then getting people at state and USAID to talk to each other. And then, but the advantage that you have is that you really are journalists. And the least you can do is make us feel guilty that we're not helping you get information.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your answer.
Thank you. Thank you, Deshlamla and Mr. Destro. Now I would like to request Tenzin Paktin from Radio Free Asia to ask the question.
Hello, everybody. I'm sorry, there's a construction going next to my office. There's a noise. Mr. Destro and the team, thank you so much for arranging this for us. As for India and Nepal region, I've been working here for 2 years. Before that, I was working with Indian media. So after working here, my experience about getting information. So RFA, focus is news from Tibet, and we have been trying to get news from Tibet every day, as long as I remember. And when the COVID hit Tibet last year, we were trying to get information because we heard that there was discrimination against Tibetans. Like there were stricter rules for Chinese in China, and not as much rules and regulations or facilities in Tibet. So we tried to call up few numbers that we got of hospitals in Tibet, and only one of we actually called like 12 numbers, and out of which we got only one got answered. And after that, we tried to call them again. Because of some difficulty, it got disconnected, and they never got back to us. It says that server rejected the call. So my difficulty and our team's difficulty is basically getting information from Tibet. We have those who have fans, if they overindulge in something to get information, their family will be punished. So, and most of our reporters, I think Chinese government already know of, and they have information on what we reluctant and careful in reporting from Tibet, where we try every day to get information, but it's getting harder every day. Even people who we know who just talk, not politics, no religion, but still, uh, daily life. When we reach out to them about their families in Tibet, they are very reluctant. They don't give us information, and we can't even blame them, because I'm born and brought up in India. I will not know their struggle, and so the main difficulty is to getting information from Tibet for us, and we try very hard. Even if we try very hard to not reveal the identity. We tamper with the voice to sources in Tibet, but that is one of our main concern. And as for the question, in October, you said that one of your main goal is having a dialogue between Dalai Lama and Chinese authorities. So how possible do you think it will be? I know even though you are leaving the post in few days, how hopeful do you think this will be after the Tibet Act is
Well,
implemented? Now it's law in US. Thank you.
thank you. I don't expect it to happen anytime soon. But I do believe that the way to how shall I say, we have to live, I think, the His Holiness's middle way. And as I was mentioning to one of my colleagues in the office today, that I think before we can truly engage the Chinese in the middle way, we have to engage one another in the middle way, and that the Tibetan community itself has to be fully committed within the factions in the community to getting along in that middle way, because the more the Chinese can divide the community, can split it up, the more likely they will to win in the end. I mean, they have a long history of that kind of surrounding you and taking over, and then not giving up the space they've taken. So the question for me is not how soon is that going to happen. It's what are the preconditions for making it happen, and pulling the Tibetan community together in its own right, and starting to solve very practical problems, including, what possibilities are there for getting information out of Tibet. I mean, I know that's hard, but we have to work together and put all of our creative hats on to figure out, well, if we can't get it one way, is there another way? And that to me is part of the His Holiness's middle way is really about helping one another, and that's what I think we have to. As my wife always reminds me about the little, when you get on the airplane, they first say, put your own face mask on first, and then help the people around you. And I think that's really what we need to be doing.
Thank you. As for the middle way approach, it's not only His Holiness Dalai Lama's approach. It's majorly accepted by most of the Tibetan population in exile. So I didn't get that we because there are a few groups who want complete freedom, that we have different of opinion in any community. So uh, to get everybody on track of middle way, it's, I think, not hard, but I think it'll take time. But every community, everybody has their right to different opinion. So I don't think everybody will just say we accept middle way approach. But if there's a way and middle way approach works out, everybody will be on the same track.
Well, if I can just add, though, that it's not getting everybody to agree in the abstract. I mean, my experience has been that when people are disagreeing on things, if we can find out, give them something to do together that will actually make them come up with something specific, like solve a specific problem or address a specific issue. You know, it amazes me how very big differences of opinion can disappear over time, you know, when you start to trust one another. And that's the point I made about transitions too, is that, you know, that relationship that you have with one another in a working relationship, that takes care of a lot of things.
Thank you, Mr. Destro and Partin, for this
Thank you.
interaction. Due to limited timing, our last question would be question or comment would be from Tenzin Belden from Voice of Tibet.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Now, Pidula Kudo.
Yes, we can hear you.
Sorry. Hello, and Teshtelek, Mr. Destro, and everyone else here. Being the last today, I really don't have much to add. Just wanted to say that my colleagues here has already given a good introduction and also their thoughts on the work that we do and the challenges that we face. So I really don't have much to add on that. And the questions that I had to was already asked also. I would like to stress a bit more on Tibet, and I've worked here for the last 2 decades, and I've been editor-in-chief since 2011. The most challenging part with our work at Voice of Tibet has been really same as mentioned by everybody else. It's mainly in terms of how to overcome the Chinese censorship when it comes to, you know, reaching inside Tibet. Because at Voice of Tibet, we mainly focus on Tibet-related issues. Our target audience is mainly the Tibetans inside Tibet. So the most challenging aspect of our work is not just reaching inside Tibet, but also in overcoming the funding challenges. So I know this question has already been posed by some of my colleagues, but I wanted to know more about, you know, there are other radio stations like Voice of America and Radio Free Asia. They are supported by the US government. But for us at Voice of Tibet, and also for few of my colleagues here, I would like to know whether whether if you can do anything for Tibetan media like us. And yeah, that was mainly just one part. And I would also like to, since I have seen you, you know, you had a very good audience with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. You also had a very extensive meeting with the CDA leadership. So I just wanted to know what are your thoughts after meeting His Holiness and also the leadership. I know you are leaving in another few days, but I just wanted to know what are your thoughts. If you can just give us what is your takeaway from this experience, and what is it that you want to, you know, forward to your the next special coordinator.
Well, let me address this a couple of different ways. The United States government gives about $30 million a year for the support of Tibet programming, and then there are special grants that are made by Congress to the Voice of America and Radio Free Asia, and so I think you should be looking in the in for you should be forming relationships with those reporters and those people to find out what's available out there. If you can't get money, you certainly might be able to get information, and you certainly can build a network that way. One of my priorities would be, and I know that the United States government is very interested in reaching out to like-minded countries, to the Europeans, to the Australians, to others, for help, in bringing and keeping the life, culture, religion, and language of the Tibetan people together. This is not something that we in the United States, we do it because we think it's a great idea and we think it's our obligation to reach out and help the community. What we need to do is broaden that base of support, so that others will contribute as well. But I can tell you here that I can't really speculate about what support levels would look like in the future. What I can tell you is that it's a good idea to get to know members of congressional staffs. I mean, that if you really want to find out what's happening with respect to Tibet in a place like Washington, talk to members of the congressional staffs. They're happy to talk to you. They probably won't talk on the record, but they can certainly give you a lot of good background. Members of Congress are usually eager to talk to people, so there's plenty of material out there. And really it's a question of not only helping you to network, but also to training getting the politicians in the CTA, more in collaboration with people like me and my colleagues.
Thank you. It's almost time, so thank you, everyone. I would like to end. I think now we have come to end of the meeting today. Thank you, Assistant Secretary Destro, for taking your time to know about Tibetan women in exile, particularly here in India, and for paying attention and giving importance to this section of society. I want to thank Kara, Anton, and Stephanie for your participation in this meeting as well. Last but not least, we would like to thank our journalist participants for your time and participation. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for having us.
No, well, thank you. I mean, thank you. Have a good day.
Yeah, have a good night to you all. Thank you.
Thank you.